It's that time after 3 straight losses, a little therapy pod for the San Francisco 49ers fans out there. When things are going great, it's never that great. Try to maybe take you down even a little bit. When you feel like it's low, it's a lot better than that. And I think it is a lot better than what the 49ers have showed the last 3 weeks. Great time for a bye. Let's talk trades as well. Locked on 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Big ups to all the everydayers out there. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right. A lot of takes, a lot of upset 49ers fans. I think one of the things we're great at doing, Croc, is getting through all the BS, telling you the truth, telling you how it is, and being as objective as possible about this team, about this league, about the San Francisco 49ers. And I know objectivity is sometimes difficult for fans and content creators, media, announcers alike. And we're going to hear from some folks on some takes about what's going on with the San Francisco 49ers in a second. But Croc, 3-game skid, not a great place to be. 5-game winning streak to start the season, the greatest place to be, right? So where are the 49ers? Probably very likely somewhere in the middle.
Well, I think as a fan base, we've seen this before, and it's a new year, new team. And I feel like every time this happens, I say the same thing: new year, new team. You don't know exactly how they're going to respond. But I would say the leader of this, which is Kyle Shanahan, has really kind of given me the confidence that even though they're going through a little bit more right now in the sense of the ups and downs or the uncertainty, or, obviously we've seen the defensive coordinator under scrutiny. I've seen the offense. I'm questioning them. 17 points a game over the last 3 games. What's going on with that? I'd say if they've shown us the ability to overcome this type of adversity, we've seen that. So I'm kind of hanging my hat on that and hoping that after this, we continue with this Nicholas Winkler streak and the 49ers get on more of a heater.
Unbelievable week. I mean, 100%. 5 straight and then 3 straight losses. Who would have thought? He nailed it so far. Again, though, don't get mad at Wink. It all ends with the Super Bowl championship, according to Wink. So we'll have to check in on what the rest of his predictions were after the bye. And we're going to talk trade deadline in a little bit as well. I want to go to, and let me pull it up on the screen here. This is from Sumer Sports. For those of you watching on YouTube, and I'll explain what it is. And Sumer Sports is an analytical website. Eric Eager works there. He's a former PFF analytics guy. And they kind of break down a lot of things, but this graph shows post-game Bengals 49ers. Obviously a lopsided win for the Bengals, 31-17. EPA is expected points added per play. So when you every play, what the expectation is based on, the history of NFL football and what you would expect to happen on that given play. If you have a good play, you're positive. If you have a bad play, you're negative. EPA per play, the 49ers were just below 0.04 on the game per play EPA. The Bengals were very good in this game. But here's what's interesting, the success rate. So in total, the 49ers were below EPA per play, but they had some good plays, and then they had some really big bad plays like interceptions and fumbles that take away from that score. So when you look at the second column here, this is success rate. So this is the percentage of plays that were positive EPA, right, during the course of the game. The 49ers were 90th percentile last week against the Bengals with 53.6% success rate. So they had some really big bad plays, but they had a lot. And in fact, they had more good plays than bad plays. Their success rate was one of the tops in the NFL. Now, it wasn't as good as the Bengals. The Bengals were even more successful, 94th percentile, I think it was, that the Bengals were with their success rate last week. And it's just a good reminder that the 49ers, obviously, things didn't go great for them this week. And you can point the quarterback, you can point to a lot of places where the 49ers lost the football game. But just the offense as a whole still had a lot of good plays. And Brock Purdy, when you go watch that game play for play, he had a lot of good throws and looked a lot like the same Brock Purdy that we've seen his entire short NFL career so far. So the defense catch interception when it's thrown. They didn't last year. They didn't early in the season when Brock Purdy threw a few. They've caught a lot more of them recently. I think Brock Purdy has made a few extra bad throws that he hasn't, but those things tend to even out, right, Croc? And I don't think Brock Purdy has played that much different, concussions aside, the end of that Monday Night Football game than he has his entire career so far with the 49ers.
I think he's played exactly the same. And that's why, we're seeing some of the outrage by fans. And it's our job to kind of, check the temperature of the fan base and address some of their concerns or things that they're really high on and kind of talk about that. I think Brock Purdy has played exactly the same. If you look, and I think when you had that chart up, you saw the explosive plays that the 49ers had. It was really high, right? Like that's something that's been continuing throughout his tenure with the 49ers. A lot of explosive plays, a lot of explosive throws. I think yesterday he had like 5 throws at 20 plus yards. He also used his legs and had some explosive plays. Brock Purdy has done a really good job throughout his tenure with the 49ers of, creating those plays off of timing and rhythm and just being accurate and hitting those type of throws. That continued yesterday. I think he threw some of those in the Vikings game. The biggest issue is the turnovers and the concerning things with when things might get a little tighter and you might start to press. What would that look like? And I'd say over the last few weeks now, whether you're dealing with the rain and the defense in Cleveland, or you're dealing with that pressure pack situation, but maybe a concussion, or not maybe, I mean, he had a concussion when he threw back-to-back interceptions, or at least after his first one, he had concussion. And then you look at this game and putting the ball in harm's way, throwing multiple interceptions late in this game as well. I think that's more concerning than anything else, but just in the sense of how it looks, feels like I'm watching the same Brock Purdy, which I think is a positive from a fan standpoint because you know what you're getting. I think the bigger question is, will the turnover-worthy throws, which are kind of tainting better performances than most people say, not the Browns. The Browns game, that was an ugly performance all the way around. But the Vikings game and the Bengals game, he threw the ball very well for 90% of the game. It was just that 10% where it really hurt you. So can he continue to improve on that? And if he does, then I don't think anybody has any big concerns with Brock Purdy as a quarterback.
And when you look at, we talked yesterday post-game about the complementary brand of football, and when you're ahead, and Fred Warner talked about this last week, it's much easier for everybody when you're up 31-10 in a game, right? Those games are easy. How do you play when you're down and you become one-dimensional? And that's what the 49ers became in this game. You're behind and you can't really run the ball, so you're throwing the ball, so that's an advantage for the defense because you're one-dimensional. And quarterbacks almost all get worse in that situation. In the rain, most quarterbacks, no matter how big their hands are, don't really love throwing a wet football. They would prefer to throw a dry football, right? So you can just look at how Brock Purdy's played, and it's not like he's doing something that's completely different or way out of line with what expectation I think should be from what we've seen of Brock Purdy in the past. It'd be better if he doesn't, if he threw a few less turnover worthy throws, but he had a few of those last year too. And I think he's actually played even better at the early part of this year than he played last year in some ways. Less frenetic pace, right? Looks more in control. Love seeing the big plays he made on the ground. Those are huge plays. Finding a receiver in Ayuk after scrambling another time and getting out of trouble. So he's making some plays. He's still making some throws. He's navigating the offense. I think everyone can kind of calm down on Brock Purdy. He maybe isn't the MVP superstar that he might have looked to some people that were ready to crown him there. And certainly those folks that were down on Purdy that are taking victory laps right now saying he's trash and he's always been, it's only the scheme, only the players around him, is not that either. So let's just enjoy the ride. And I think that's kind of been our thing this whole time is like, let's wait to crown him one thing or the other and continue to watch a quarterback who's pretty much been the same as he's been all along.
Now, here's a question I will ask, right? Because we talked about him pretty much being the same, and we talked about, hey man, there were MVP talks. I mean, even we brought up some of that with, man, he's functioning in this offense as well, or if not better than any other quarterback in their offense, right? And you have to factor in the weapons and things that he has as well. Well, you take away Deebo Samuel, and then you don't have Trent Williams, things have kind of started to change a little bit. It just looks different in the sense of just the overall execution and then the points, right? And like when these turnovers are coming, how much of an impact do you think it is losing that? Well, let me first say this. Most teams could only dream of having an offense that has Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, just them, let alone adding Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams. So are we letting him off the hook a little by saying, if he doesn't have a Deebo Samuel to help out even more, that are we kind of letting him off the hook in the sense of saying he just needs so much more than everyone else? And if that is the case, then is he the long-term quarterback then that a lot of people think he is?
That's a fantastic question. I'm going to answer my version of that next. I want to hear from Taylor Lewan. He was with Kay Adams on the Up and Adams show. That hey, he's got a source that said a certain thing about Brock Purdy, and we'll get into all of this. And that is an absolutely a great question. And I think I do have an answer for that, Croc, next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by DoorDash. Did the game go to timeout? Time to order DoorDash. Is it halftime? That's ordering time. 2-minute warning. You got it. That's your cue to order in and get on the DoorDash app. Download the DoorDash app if you don't have it, and get that football spread for Monday Night Football, for the 49ers game, for whatever game you're getting ready to watch. You got to be prepared and have that spread ready to go for football. That is non-negotiable in my home. And this week it was Super Duper Burger. I know there's always people arguing about what's the best burger. Is it this place? Is it this place? I got a place locally. If you're in San Francisco Bay Area, you might be around one as well. Super Duper Burger. That is the spot. You DoorDash that on you're feeling great about that meal. And our listeners can get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply. Don't forget, use code LOCKED23 for 50% off up to $10 value on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and spend $15 or more. Subject to change, terms apply. Okay, Grok. You rephrased the question again for me. And I'm going to give you my take on what I think about the weapons in Brock Purdy.
Okay, so essentially, I know I phrased it. It was kind of a little long-winded, but I'm going to try to summarize it here.
Okay.
49ers have terrific weaponry, even without Deebo Samuel. You have Brandon Ayuk, you have Christian McCaffrey, you have George Kittle, right? Like you have Kyle Shanahan calling plays. I think most teams in the NFL would love to have just that, let alone having the Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams. If you have to have Deebo Samuel with that group of guys to function to a higher level in an offense, are you the legit franchise quarterback that people believe he is? Because that's an embarrassment of riches.
Yes, it is. And what the 49ers have without those guys, as you mentioned, that's still better than what most teams have in the NFL. And as my co-host Matt Williamson on the Peacock and Williamson NFL show said earlier today, he said 29 other teams would kill to have the 49ers problems right now. And so I think that's a great way to put it. And I would almost point to Kyle Shanahan in that with that same question and not even put it on the quarterback, Croc. If you're Kyle Shanahan and you're an offensive genius, and McCaffrey and Ayuk and Kittle, and like that's not enough. You need the best of everything at every position, and you need the best pass rusher on the defensive line, and you need another $20 million guy on the defensive line, and another $20 million a year guy on the defensive line, and now you got to trade for a guy at the deadline, and you need the best linebacker in the NFL, and you need all those things to be good. I mean, I think most coaches would say, yeah, I could do something with those guys too, So I don't think it all goes on the quarterback. That's not to say that they need to make a change with the coaching staff either, but the players are in place and you're going to lose guys. Every team's going to lose guys. The Minnesota Vikings, they rely more on Justin Jefferson than the 49ers rely on any one player they have. And they beat the 49ers in prime time, right? Without Justin Jefferson, with a rookie wide receiver making plays against him. And as it pertains to Brock Purdy, I think that's the question we've had about him and why we were like, okay, let's wait and see Brock Purdy coming into 2023. As great as it looked last year, let's wait and see before we find out exactly who he is, because there might have to be times where he's driving the bus or he's driving the train, right? He's conducting the train and not just one of the cars that's being pulled along by the rest of the talent on the roster. And I think we've absolutely seen evidence that not having Debo there, I think Ray and Juwan have disappointed me since Debo's been out. I think flat out, to be honest with you, I think we see too much 15 on the field. He's a good run blocker, right? But he's still a wide receiver. And
is he? That's not what you've been calling him.
Well, that's the thing. So they're rolling an extra tight end out there. And I think that's the problem. It's nice when he's your third guy and he's more of a move tight end and you run to his side. But when he's replacing Debo, that's a big drop off. And I think we've seen that. And I think that might have been, I'm not a X's and O's nerd. That's not my strongest forte. And so I'm guessing.
And I'm not either.
Yeah. But like on that interception that Purdy threw to who was it? That was to Pratt. No, not the Pratt one. It was the other one, to Wilson, I think it was. There's all 7 of the Browns' back 7 defenders were in that area of the football field. And all 4 of the 49ers eligible receivers were in that area of the football field. I mean, like, Kyle Shanahan's asking Brock Purdy to throw in this tiny window. And we've seen this from back in the Jimmy G days. And that's why we stopped calling Jimmy G's interceptions Jimmy G interceptions. We started calling it the Kyle Shanahan interception. So I feel like that's what that one was in this game. And we've seen Brock throw them now. We've seen him get away with some of those throws. We've seen other quarterbacks in between throw that same interception. We saw Trey Lance throw that same interception where they think they're trying to hit a window. And the better the player, the more likely they are to make a play on that, because they know it's coming and they can kind of deke you and say, yeah, okay, you're looking me off, but guess what? I know you're coming back with the in breaker, because that's all you do in the offense, right? Like, how many times have we watched this offense, right? We know the dig is coming. So does the defense, right? And so you have to be perfect. And there's guys over the top and there's a linebacker here and there's DBs on either side. And you got to hit this window. And Juwan Jennings, I think, got Purdy picked off last week because of how bad his route was and how late he was to getting to where Purdy's anticipating the throw to go. And I think I'd look like the dagger concept to me, which is the inside guy kind of running them off. And then I think it was Ayuk coming back across on the left side. And then there's another. So there was like 2 ends breaking also. But I think Juwan Jennings, like, either somebody ran the wrong route because 2 wide receivers in the same spot, or Jennings just wasn't fast enough to clear out. So I think he's supposed to run a post and clear that out. And he wasn't there. It's just really a jumbled mess. And so Kyle Shanahan's offense is aggressively intermediate in the pass game. That's the way I termed it. And Brock's good at making those throws, but you can't put it all on Brock all the time. Every interception is different. Every throw is different. He made a lot of good plays. And he still made enough plays without Debo. I'm trying to get to the answer to your question. He's still playing fine without Debo and without Trent Williams, but it always helps to have those guys. And I would say Trent in the run game helps, because think about all of Christian McCaffrey's big runs this year. They come on the left side, right? And so I think that's where it hurts him. And of course, he did get hit from rushers coming off of that left side of the offensive line in this game as well. So it certainly doesn't help having those guys out. But there's been enough plays to be made without those guys, and Purdy's done pretty well. But it's not all on Purdy either.
I'm just trying to figure it out, because at the end of the day, with all those guys, and I know he's the quarterback, and again, we've talked about how he has played well for a lot of the game, then you have the weird moments, right? Like that interception in the red zone, huge moment. And I think those moments are even more magnified when your defense is not playing well. Like, that's why we're hearing all the fire Wilkes stuff right now. Like, it's like, fire him, because when the defense isn't playing well, then it's hurting the offense. I just feel like in the NFL, it's too hard to win games like that, where you have to count on every week your defense leading the way. Like, at some point, the offense has to take over. And, we haven't seen that a whole lot from the 49ers, definitely not now. And I think just the combination of the two right now, it's just really bad that not one side of the ball can pick up the other side. Like, that's not ideal. Just think about teams when it comes to winning it all. And I referenced earlier, I was talking about some, 49ers stuff, the Philadelphia Eagles. And last game, watching them Sunday play against Washington Commanders, and they started out. I mean, they were down. It was like 14-3 or something like that. Then 10-17, they're down. Then all of a sudden, the offense says, "All right, like defense, you guys aren't playing well right now. We're gonna pick you up." And all of a sudden, boom, touchdown, 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 touchdown. Right. And all right, you scored 24 points. Like Washington scored 24 points. It doesn't matter because we have dang near 40. Like, where is that with the 49ers when the defense is struggling like they have the last couple of weeks? And all right, you got 24 points. That's not going to matter because we're going to score more than that. And that's when I start to hold the offense accountable because you have all these elite weapons on that side with Kyle Shanahan, who's the like mastermind of offense. And I'm not seeing the results there to help out a poorly playing defense right now. And I think to win a Super Bowl, you're going to need that. Like, you're going to need that offense to pick up the defense because you're going to play some big dogs, whether it's in the NFC or you get to the AFC. Whatever AFC team is waiting for you, they will be able to score points. Are you going to be able to outscore them when your defense isn't playing as well?
Next, Croc, Taylor Lewan chiming in. He's got some sources that had some negative things to say about one Brock Purdy. We're going to listen to that and see if that passes the BS meter for us here. And a little preview of the trade deadline that's coming up in the next 24 hours or so as well. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. There's no lines for the 49ers going into a bye week, but you know what you could do at FanDuel Sportsbook is, if you believe Nicholas Winkler, and he's been 100% so far, get better odds on the 49ers to win the Super Bowl right now than you could 3 weeks ago when they were 5-0. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet line. That's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, now is a great time to get in on that action. The app is super easy to use and such a wide range of ways to bet, including those Super Bowl bets, the futures bet, NFL draft bets, there's trade deadline bets, spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Again, FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Real quick note on the concussions with Brock Purdy. He banged his head pretty hard when he did get hit by a pass rusher that came off the side that Trent Williams is usually manning there, and bounced his head off the turf a little bit, Croc, playing just 6 days after going into concussion protocol from the Monday Night Football game. I asked Kyle Krabs, who's the host of Locked On Dolphins, and they dealt with multiple concussions for Tua last year, and he's showing no ill signs so far this year, but he showed a lot of ill signs last year, and even some scary moments on the field, and some times when it was like, man, maybe this guy should not have been rushed back to be on the football field. And some people calling for him to retire after saw some of those things for his own future health. I asked Kyle Krabs what that was like and what advice I should give to 49ers fans that are asking me about the concussions and this stuff. And he said it's one of the most difficult things he's ever had to deal with covering the Dolphins in print, in video, on audio, because there's not a lot of answers, and there's not a lot of ways to make it sound better when you're talking about a brain injury as well. So the answer is to be as cautious as possible. But the player wants to play, the team wants the player to play, the fans want to see the player on the field. And so those things are sort of at odds with each other. And he said he saw the Purdy injury and saw him, with the sack and banging his head off the turf again a few days later. And he's like, yeah, it's a scary thing. And so he didn't really have any great advice except for to say, it's just, we don't have any answers, and you hope everyone's doing the right thing, and you hope for the best, and you hope the doctors have it covered. And I don't know if there's evidence or if you're just looking too hard for that evidence because of some bad performances, quote unquote, bad performances from Purdy recently. But no better time to have a bye than right now and get an extra week with him not taking any hits.
You definitely have to worry about that second impact syndrome. And that was something I learned in like kinesiology class, where you get a concussion and shortly after that, whether it's that same day or even a week later, you have another traumatic impact hit, blow to the head. And like that can really develop. I mean, death can come from it, some long-term effects as well. And that's the one thing like I really worry about any of these guys like coming back shortly after a concussion, because you can get cleared. Oh, I'm great, I'm fine. And that second impact syndrome is something that is really deathly. So when he hit his head on the ground, threw an interception, they called it back. As a matter of fact, crazy. They called roughing the passer. I did not think that was roughing the passer. I saw two guys getting blocked, fighting through the blocks, fighting off of the blocks to hit the quarterback, and he just fell back hard because it's like you wrapped his legs, so he falls back hard, hits his head, they throw a flag. I was like, thank you, fumble like the next play. But so I guess like Brock Purdy said, no, I'm gonna get this turn off. I'm gonna get this turnover off one way or another. But when he hit his head and like put his hands on his head, I was like, oh man, you start to worry about the kid's mental mindset. I mean, or makeup or how he is. Think about that linebacker. There was a linebacker that retired, Chris Borland.
Yeah.
I mean, why did Chris Borland retire? Concussions, like hits to the head, short period of time. He's like, nah, for my longevity with my life, it's not what I want. And those are things you definitely worry about, especially with these quarterbacks in the pocket.
Here's a clip of Taylor Lewan, who's got some inside information, he says, from a source, an unnamed source, about Brock Purdy and how good he is. Talking with Kay Adams on Up and Adams. This from at Up and Adams Show on Twitter. And here we go.
I'm not going to tell you. Told me back in January. Said this to me back in January. Brock Purdy's not the guy. He's not the guy. He's not as good as people think he is.
How reliable?
Reliable in the sense that when these guys went down, he texted me and told me Brock Purdy's going to start throwing interceptions. He's not going to be doing as well.
So everybody's just going to think it's Kittle. That's telling you.
No, God, no. Kittle's like the nicest, most positive individual. He would never. It was not a player for the 49ers.
But I will say, I mean, Purdy wasn't the one giving up 8 million yards yesterday.
I know the defense is that's a weird position too. You think they'd be doing a whole lot better. I don't know. I think the defense is going to be all right. They got the studs. They just got to figure it out a little bit. But I would, from what I've been told, this is not my opinion.
Yeah.
I would say we got to worry about Brock Purdy a little bit if I'm just being the messenger.
A very reliable, because there's like the busting with the boys level reliable. Then there's like Up and Adams reliable. Then there's, then you work your way down to like, I was about to say political place. I'm not doing that.
No.
Not reliable. So like where on the reliability scale do you put this source?
Based on the scale you gave me, I would go between Up and Adams and Bussin.
Wow.
And so it's a reliable source. Now, things can change. Maybe the boy starts playing a whole lot better, and I hope he does. But I was just told that he has aliens around him, and that's why he looks so good. But once there's enough film out there on him, people are going to know how to beat him. That's what I've been told, and that's what's happened the last 3 weeks.
Before we address what he says, we got to take a second to acknowledge that mustache. Like, that was a really manly man mustache that Taylor Lewan was sporting there.
I agree to disagree on that one. It's an all right mustache.
You don't like the stash?
I don't think the stash is a great look, and it's also become so obviously like zany that I think it's corny because it's not zany anymore. Because everyone's trying to go to the mustache and be like, "Hey, look how unique and cool I am because I grew a mustache." And it's like, yeah, like everybody else who's unique and cool also has a mustache. So I'm out on that. But no, he's no Tom Selleck. Okay, let's put it that way. First of all, it's the easiest take in the history of the world to say, "Oh, Brock Purdy's only good because Kyle Shanahan and the talent around him." It's the thing that everyone's been saying about Brock Purdy that doesn't believe in him the entire time. So that's a snoozer of a take. My question is, how well placed is this source? And is it somebody in the building? Because he said it's not a player. And it's not George Kittle, which is the first thing I thought because he's been on that show before. And that's definitely not something George Kittle would say. And in fact, he said the opposite about Brock Purdy and how in Kyle Shanahan and everybody in the locker room is about Brock Purdy. I have a hard time believing that this source is well placed enough that it matters at all. But a lot of people think that this has mattered so far today. And I was asked about it by some listeners, so I wanted to address it. Croc, what do you think?
I think these things pop up when there's kind of a low moment in someone's either career or season, whatnot. With a few games and the kid hasn't played very well, then all of a sudden, you start to hear quotes like this. Who could it be? I don't know. If he says not a player, the person that came up to me was like, Rand Carthon, because he's saying reliable. Like when I hear reliable, I think this is someone that is in the know with them. Like he's been around them. He's a part of the process and was just like, I don't know. You start taking some of these guys away. I don't. It started getting a little weird. Like he must have been there, but it's not a player on the 49ers. Could it be a former player? Could it be Aziz? Oh, because he said not a 49ers player. Did he say he's not a player in general?
I don't. I'd have to go.
Aziz is on Tennessee,
but Aziz is in Houston, right? Oh no, Aziz. Oh, Danny Brunskill, offensive lineman, Tennessee Titans, Rand Carthon. Now, so those would be. I think those would hold some weight if it's not a current 49ers player. Maybe Rand Carthon's like, I got to get out here. It's going to be a disaster. I'm going to go take the GM job for the Titans. Because Rick Scangarello, remember? He was the one that was like famously trashing Trey Lance. He turned out he was kind of right. Like he wasn't the guy for the 49ers.
Wrong.
We'll see what Trey Lance ends up becoming elsewhere. Trey Lance still 23, younger than Will Levis, who went off in his debut, by the way, this weekend. Man, I wish Trey Lance was in Minnesota right now. What a perfect place that would be for him with Kirk Cousins' torn Achilles.
I always thought that made sense because especially when you hear that they weren't committing to Kirk Cousins long term. So I always felt like, man, if the season starts to get away from him, like that would be the perfect opportunity to just say, all right, Lance, just go play. And if you're good, great. If you're not, who cares? And we will have a top pick. Like I felt like that was and then now you see the injury with Kirk, who I don't think anybody would have foreseen that coming because Kirk Cousins just doesn't miss games. So, it's really unfortunate that he went down with this, but maybe a great time for Minnesota because, hey, man, just keep losing games. And, you end up having a top pick and maybe you can get one of these quarterbacks who now we start talking about quarterbacks in this upcoming class. Getting a little weird because Caleb Williams is not playing very well. He was like the de facto number one, no matter what, like, generational.
He should have shut down the entire year.
Yeah, because it's starting to get a little weird. It was like, okay, Drake May. And it went from like a strong quarterback class to Drake May. We'll see what's going on with Caleb Williams. He can't play like on script, so people are worried about that. And then there are a lot of others, like guys that you thought were really going to be talented, like DJ Uiagalelei, Spencer Rattler. Anyways, there we'll see what they end up doing, the Minnesota Vikings. But ultimately, back to the comment. I think that, like you said, that's the low-hanging fruit. Like that's the easiest thing to say. The kid, last pick in the draft, doesn't possess a lot of physical tools, but then he has these weapons, and you see how they rely on him. He relies on those guys. Run after catch. Is it the offense? Is it Kyle Shanahan? All that and the other. Ultimately, I just can't wait to see like how does he deal with this adversity. We wanted to see how he reacted to adversity. And we had one glimpse of it last year against the Las Vegas Raiders. But now you get a good look. Like, this is real adversity. You're getting questioned about this in post-game press conferences now. Like, they asked him about this. Do you hear the outside noise? Like, this is adversity. You're not playing well late in these games. You're turning the ball over. The offense isn't scoring points. Nothing is coming easy. All right. How do you handle this? And I think this will let you know, for the long haul, who is he going to be? Because we've seen other guys, right? Like, the franchise guys. Like, how did, as a matter of fact, 49ers got to go play them, but Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. 10 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, had to deal with a head coach being fired midway through the year. It was weird. It was tumultuous. And they said, you know what? Nah, man, we're going to go get you a coach. And he overcame adversity and went to the playoffs and overcame a 27-0 deficit or whatever it was to win a playoff game. All right, Trevor Lawrence did that. Like that was like, wow, look how he overcame that tough time. And now the 49ers got to go play them, who prior to this, you're like, oh, that's a W. Now it's like, Jacksonville's playing very well, and the 49ers have to try to get back on track traveling to Jacksonville. Like that's going to be a tough game, but I can't wait to see how Brock Purdy just handles what he's currently going through now. Banged up, injury, concussion, interceptions, injuries to the offense, defense not playing well. How do you handle this?
Fascinating. Croc, the one thing the 49ers have to do at the trade deadline, heck, they could have made a trade while we're talking here. We'll be back Tuesday post-trade deadline to break it all down. But one thing 49ers need to do at the trade deadline,
Go get Jalen Johnson, cornerback from Chicago. Like, go get help. Isaiah Oliver's not playing well in the slot. He's giving up. I just saw a stat. He's been targeted like 20 times over the last however many games, and they've completed like every pass. And Diamador Lenore is giving up a healthy amount of yards as well. I don't think that Travarius Ward is playing that much better either. Go get you a cornerback. See if you like him for the rest of the year, but at least right now, he's a half-year rental that should make your defense better. Maybe slide Diamador Lenore inside, put him back in the slot, even though Oliver is tackling well, just not covering well. So go get Jalen Johnson. That gives yourself the best opportunity of trying to salvage something with the secondary and improve in some type of way.
I like it. I would say cornerback as well. Maybe look to the Panthers. J.C. Horn, if you can. Dante Jackson's another one that might be available there. They got a couple of receivers if you were trying to help out with Debo. Laviska Shenault, Terrace Marshall, I know you liked a lot coming out of the draft, Croc. I did as well. Gives you a different look at wide receiver. Cordero Patterson's a name that I've talked about a lot on here. I think he would help a lot in just depth, running back, receiver. Debo, Christian McCaffrey, sort of a usage type of guy. There's not many guys out there that can do a little bit of both in a wide back sort of a role. There was reports the Niners have been kicking around at edge rusher and corner. So those are probably the positions to look at, maybe offensive line, but I think corner is number one. And we'll see what the 49ers do. And of course, we'll have it covered for you right here on Locked On 49ers. We'll find out what's going to happen next with the 49ers. We'll just ask Wink. We don't even need to watch the games anymore. That'll be on Wednesday as well. So we will talk to you then right here, Locked On 49ers.